The Rohingya Crisis. The Rohingya Muslims of Burma are one of the most oppressed and persecuted peoples in the world. They are 1 million people with no country and no rights. Though most Rohingya were born and raised in predominantly Buddhist Burma, the nation does not want them and does not recognize them. The Rohingya have suffered generations of persecution, oppression, and the denial of basic human rights. They are not recognized as citizens of Burma, and the government considers them illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. This is odd considering Bangladesh did not exist before 1971, and the Rohingya were in Burma long before that. The nation of Burma, also known as Myanmar, is actively trying to make 1 million people disappear. And Burma's most predominant citizen, Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi, seems unwilling or unable to improve the situation. While Buddhist mobs attack Rohingya Muslims and destroy mosques, while the military burns and rapes its way through Rohingya villages, while hundreds of thousands of Rohingya live in dilapidated refugee camps, Aung San Suu Kyi insists there is no crisis.
Unbelievable. We thought she is a godmother. She will bring prosperity, peace for everyone, and she has a big heart to treat everybody equally.
But Ms. Suu Kyi failed to acknowledge the plight of the Rohingya Muslim minority, who've been described as the most persecuted on earth. The Burmese army have attacked Rohingya villages, burning down buildings, killing and raping as they go.
We are going to explore the origins of the Rohingya crisis. We will investigate the claims that the Rohingya are illegal immigrants. We will also discover how the situation got so bad. Let's begin by first learning more about the nation in question, Myanmar. Myanmar is a nation in Southeast Asia bordered by Bangladesh, India, Laos, Thailand, and China. Until 1989, it was known as Burma. Many nations still refer to it by this name, including the United States. Both names originate from the name of the largest ethnic group in Burma, the Bamar people. The Bamar are one of over 100 different ethnic groups recognized by the Burmese government. And this brings us to the Citizenship Act of 1982, which lies at the heart of the Rohingya crisis. The Citizenship Act codified the status and rights of the citizens of Burma. However, critics say the act was just a tool to increase political power for the majority ethnic Bamar people. According to the Citizenship Act, members of ethnic groups that existed in Burma before 1823 are full citizens. The Rohingya are left out of this equation since most of them entered Burma as a result of British colonization, which began in 1823. As a result, the Rohingya Muslims of Burma, like the Palestinians, are a stateless people. They are not wanted in the country of their birth, nor are they wanted anywhere else in the world.
These people have just crossed the border. They're in no man's land. They've been driven from their homes in Myanmar. Now they're waiting for permission to enter Bangladesh. The Rohingya are a people that neither country wants.
Before the current refugee crisis, it was estimated that over 1 million Rohingya lived in Burma. However, there are only about 300,000 Rohingya living in Burma these days. Lack of citizenship is one of the major problems the Rohingya face. If they are considered illegal immigrants, it gives the government license to mistreat them. But religious conflict is another factor that contributes to their persecution. Burma is predominantly Buddhist. 90% of the 55 million people there are Buddhists, but Muslims make up the largest religious minority. Almost all Rohingya are Muslim, but not all Muslims in Burma are Rohingya. In fact, Islam was in Burma long before the Rohingya were. Islam in Burma. There is evidence of Arab merchants in Burma as early as the 3rd century. By the 9th century, these Arab merchants not only brought goods for trade, they also brought Islam. The Muslim Arabs were able to convert some of the local Burmese to Islam. While Muslims have remained a religious minority in Burma, their numbers have grown consistently. In 1872, there were at least 58,000 Muslims in Burma. By 1911, that number had more than tripled to 178,000. And by the end of World War I, there were over 500,000 Muslims living in Burma. Now, there are well over 1 million Muslims in Burma, making up almost 4% of the population. Some experts believe there may be even more, as the government has not released census figures since the 1980s. All religious minorities in Burma face some level of discrimination, but Muslims seem to be the favored target. No doubt, the rapid growth of the Muslim population in Burma has sparked fears among the Buddhist populace.
They claim that all of the Muslims are terrorists, but till now, there is not a single proof of it. 96% of the population is scarce for the 4% Muslim.
Ismani Ni spent 15 years fighting against the military dictatorship and was captured and tortured for 6 months. He's now a spokesperson for the increasingly fearful Muslim community and is being kept under virtual house arrest.
Burma is a nation driven by ethnic and religious identity. Understanding this is critical to understanding the Rohingya crisis. As irrational as it may seem, the Buddhists living in Burma are actually afraid their country will soon be overrun by Muslims. These same Buddhists also claim most of the Muslims in Burma came from Bangladesh and should be sent back there. In fact, most Buddhists in Burma do not even like to use the word Rohingya, as that gives them legitimacy. They prefer to call them Bengali. Arakan. Historically, the Rohingya have lived in the western coastal Burmese province of Rakhine. This area was once home of the Arakan Kingdom and was known as Arakan for most of its history. Rakhine is separated from the rest of the nation by the Arakan Mountains. For centuries, it was a primary trading destination as it provided access into the rest of Burma and from there on into China. Arakan shares a border with the nation we now call Bangladesh. In the 14th century, Arakan was an independent kingdom. The Arakan Mountains provided a buffer from the more powerful Burmese kingdoms of Inner Burma. But in 1406, the Burmese kingdom crossed the mountains and invaded Arakan. Arakan reached out to the Sultan of Bengal for help. The Sultan drove out the Burmese invaders, and Arakan essentially became a vassal of Bengal. The largest ethnic group in Arakan are the Rakhine people, who are mostly Buddhist. But being a vassal of the Muslim Sultan of Bengal allowed Islam to further permeate Arakan. During this period of Bengali influence, the Rakhines absorbed many facets of Islamic culture. The Buddhist Arakan kings adopted the titles of their Muslim overlords, and they would often appoint Muslims to high administrative positions. But this Islamic influence was cut short in 1784 when the Konbaung dynasty of Burma finally conquered Arakan for good. Tragedy followed as the Bamar people, the largest ethnic group in Burma, began persecuting the local Rakhines. Thousands of Rakhines fled Arakan for Bengal, which was now under British rule. Thousands of others were forcefully migrated out of Arakan and into central Burma. By the time the British arrived 25 years later, Arakan was nearly empty. Burma shared a border with British India, and the British were looking to expand. Throughout the 1800s, the British and Burmese kingdoms fought 3 wars, with the British winning each time. The First Anglo-Burmese War concluded in 1824. Burma agreed to cede Arakan to the British as part of the peace deal. The 1982 Citizenship Act is based on this event. The British wanted to make a profit off of Arakan, but the population had been devastated by the Burma persecution. To resolve this, the British brought in settlers from India, including thousands of workers from Bengal, most of whom were Muslim. Before long, the British had turned Arakan into one of the largest rice producers in the world. Meanwhile, the Konbaung dynasty of Burma lost a second war and even more territory to the British. The Burmese desperately needed an ally to help even the odds. In 1885, the Burmese king secretly opened talks with the French government. When the British found out, they again declared war on Burma. The British won, forced the Burmese king to abdicate, and absorbed Burma into British East India. It is during this period of British rule that most of the people we call Rohingya migrated into Burma, eventually settling in Arakan. Buddhists versus Muslims. Tensions between Buddhists and Muslims began to rise during British rule. These tensions were further stoked by Buddhist persecution in India and competition for jobs. In 1930, during the height of the Great Depression, hundreds of Indian laborers in Yangon, the capital of Burma, went on strike to protest poor working conditions. The British responded by hiring local Burmese workers to replace them. The Indians then decided to go back to work, and the British promptly fired all the Burmese they just hired. The Burmese blamed the Indians, and riots broke out, leading to the death of over 200 Indians. In 1938, Burmese newspapers published pictures of Buddhist monks who had been beaten by Indian police officers. This led to more riots, and another 200 Muslims were killed, and dozens of mosques were destroyed. By this time, the Burmese considered Muslims and Indians to be one and the same. The situation grew worse when World War II began and Britain found itself at war with the Japanese Empire. In 1942, the Japanese Imperial Army prepared to invade, and the people of Burma had to choose sides. The Burma people, the dominant ethnic group in Burma, sided with Japan, while the Indian Muslims sided with Britain. Early in the war, the British were forced to retreat out of Arakan and across the border into Bengal. As they left, they armed the Muslims of Arakan, hoping they'd hold off the Japanese. The fighting between the British-backed Muslims and the combined Burmese and Japanese forces was brutal. Both sides committed atrocities, and by the time the Japanese were defeated, 30,000 Buddhists and 40,000 Muslims were dead. Eventually, the Allies prevailed and the Japanese Empire was defeated. But the war also devastated Britain, who would have to begin divesting itself of its global empire. The Muslims of Burma expected to be rewarded for their loyalty and hoped the British would give them their own country. For the Muslims of Arakan, an independent Burma was bad news. A Burmese nation would surely be controlled by the Buddhist Burma, whom they had fought against during the war. However, the British refused to grant them an autonomous region. Then Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, refused their request to annex Arakan. The Muslims of Burma would have to accept living under Buddhist rule. Independence and Civil War. When Burma became an independent nation in 1948, some of the Muslim fears were realized. The new government fired all Rohingya civil servants and replaced them with ethnic Burma. Furthermore, the Rohingya were denied citizenship and barred from most government services. Still demanding an autonomous Muslim region, some of the Rohingya formed militant groups and began an insurgency. The northern parts of Arakan, now known as Rakhine Province, were predominantly Muslim. The insurgents were able to draw support and sympathy from the local populace and put up a strong fight. In time, the insurgency took on a religious tone, and the Rohingya fighters started calling themselves Mujahideen. The Burmese government was also busy fighting insurgencies against various other rebel groups. However, by 1949, the government was winning the fight. The Mujahideen, though backed by Pakistan, were mostly relegated to the jungles of Arakan. In 1950, the Burmese government asked Pakistan to stop supporting the rebels. Pakistan agreed to stop supporting the rebels, and in exchange, Burma agreed to stop persecuting their Muslim citizens. Without Pakistani support, the Mujahideen insurgency slowly petered out. In 1957, several rebel groups surrendered to the government, and by 1960, the insurgency was over. The victory proved the Burmese military's capability and strength. The Burmese government, however, was not doing so well. Years of warfare, corruption, and ethnic favoritism had rendered the government weak and ineffective. With public confidence waning, General Ne Win staged a coup and overthrew the civilian government. The military established a one-party system and enacted several reforms that improved the lives of Burma's peasants and farmers. But the military government also actively persecuted certain groups, including ethnic Chinese, Muslims, and the Rohingya. And then came the Pakistani Civil War. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan was made up of two land masses known as East Pakistan and West Pakistan. The two Pakistans were separated by almost 1,000 miles of Indian territory. The majority of the people in East Pakistan were Bengali, while the majority in West Pakistan were Punjabi and Pashtun. This created a cultural and social rift between East and West, and some Bengalis began demanding independence. In 1970, the Pakistani government launched Operation Searchlight to root out and neutralize the Bengali separatist movements in East Pakistan. The military operation soon devolved into a massacre, leading to the deaths of over 4,000 Bengalis. Operation Searchlight galvanized the Bengalis to resist the government even more, and this led to an all-out war between the Pakistani government and Bengali separatists. India provided financial and military support to the Bengali separatists, but did not enter the war until Pakistan attacked some of its air bases. Pakistan could not fight both India and the separatists and eventually surrendered. Pakistan agreed to recognize East Pakistan's independence, which became the People's Republic of Bangladesh. The war lasted about 9 months and resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians. This destruction led to millions of Bangladeshi refugees, which concerned the military government of Burma. In response, Burma launched Operation Dragon King in 1978. The stated purpose was to root out illegal immigrants in preparation for a national census. But Burma believed the new Bangladeshi government was too weak to secure its border. The Burmese government swept through Rakhine Province, rounding up Rohingya villagers. Allegations of mass rape and murder followed, and over 200,000 Rohingya fled to Bangladesh. The Burmese military said this proved they were illegal immigrants. Bangladesh did not want hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees either. They brokered a deal with Burma, allowing the refugees to return, most of whom resettled in Rakhine Province. 4 years later, the Burmese Citizenship Act passed, allowing the government to deny citizenship to the Rohingya people. Aung San Suu Kyi. By the late 1980s, Burma was in serious trouble. The government was heavily in debt and had been run by the same man, General Ne Win, since 1962. Very little had changed regarding freedom of speech or a democratic voting process. In September 1987, the government tampered with the currency hoping to stem the rising debt. In doing so, they also wiped out the life savings of thousands of people, leading to riots and demonstrations. At first, these demonstrations were spearheaded by students whose parents had been saving up to send them to university. But before long, the protests spread to include the Buddhist religious establishment and the middle class. The demonstrations carried on throughout the end of 1987 and into 1988. By June 1988, the entire country was in a state of constant unrest. The government tried to forcefully quell the protests, leading to the deaths of hundreds of students, protesters, and police. It was clear the people had lost faith in General Ne Win, who resigned in July 1988. But his hand-picked successor was equally disliked, and the protests continued. The protesters planned a massive nationwide demonstration for August 8, 1988. The number 8 is special in Buddhist culture, and the demonstration was called the 8888 movement. The government found out about the planned protest and deployed security forces throughout the nation with orders to shoot to kill if provoked. Unsurprisingly, the protests soon turned violent. The military opened fire on the protesters, who fought right back. The violence continued to escalate as the nation was thrown into chaos. The protesters held huge rallies throughout the nation, hoping to galvanize the people and attract the attention of the international media. At one of these rallies, a young woman named Aung San Suu Kyi gave a speech before nearly 500,000 people. As the daughter of one of Burma's founders, Aung San Suu Kyi held a special place in the hearts of the Burmese people. After giving that speech, she became the de facto leader of Burma's pro-democracy movement. However, the government was winning. By September 1988, the military had subdued most of the country. The military leaders canceled the constitution, imposed martial law, and began a brutal crackdown. Aung San Suu Kyi appealed to the international community for help, and while these pleas helped make her an international figure, they did little to stop the government. By October 1988, the 888 movement had been snuffed out and over 10,000 people were dead. In 1990, the military allowed elections in Burma for the first time in 30 years. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won 392 of the 492 parliamentary seats, which would have made her the prime minister. But the military junta refused to give up power. They declared the election corrupt and annulled the results. The military tightened control over the nation and put Aung San Suu Kyi under house arrest. She would remain there for most of the next 21 years. While under house arrest, Aung San Suu Kyi publicly announced her intention to bring political change to Burma. Her insistence on using peaceful means in the process earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. Since she was still confined to her home, her children had to accept it on her behalf. Aung San Suu Kyi was now an international hero. She had joined the ranks of Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Mother Teresa. By the late 2000s, the entire world was on her side. ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, called for her release, with Malaysia threatening to expel Burma if it did not comply. In 2007, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to award her the Congressional Gold Medal. Also in 2007, the Canadian Parliament awarded her with honorary citizenship. In 2008, the United Nations passed a resolution demanding her release. In 2009, U.S. President Barack Obama also called for her release. Finally, in November 2010, the Burmese government caved under the pressure and Aung San Suu Kyi was allowed to leave her home. With her release, Aung San Suu Kyi's popularity rose even higher. In 2011, French film company EuropaCorp released The Lady, a biopic about her life. The film was directed by Luc Besson and starred Michelle Yeoh as Aung San Suu Kyi. All of this culminated with Aung San Suu Kyi winning a parliamentary seat in the 2012 elections. This time, the military did not intervene, and it seemed her hopes for a democratic Myanmar had finally been realized. The Rohingya crisis worsens. Throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s, while Aung San Suu Kyi was confined to her home, the Rohingya were being forced out of theirs.
We are seeing what we call the slow-burning genocide that is unfolding with characteristic spikes of killings, and then followed by plateaus of carefully designed and structured destruction of Rohingya as an ethnic, religious, and national group.
Not long after annulling the 1990 elections, the military deployed troops to Rakhine province. A series of human rights violations followed, including allegations of rape, forced labor, and destruction of mosques. 250,000 Rohingya fled across the border, forcing the Bangladeshi government to deploy its own military. Burma agreed to allow those refugees who could prove their citizenship to return to their homes. But since most of the refugees were Rohingya and Burma did not recognize them as citizens, they rejected most of them. In June 2012, just a month after Aung San Suu Kyi won her seat in parliament, a group of Rohingya men allegedly raped and killed a Buddhist woman in Rakhine. Buddhists in Rakhine violently retaliated, leading to the death of at least 10 Muslims. A large group of Muslims protested the deaths after Friday prayers that week. The police showed up, tensions rose, shots were fired, and another dozen Muslims were killed. The riots continued to spread, with Muslims and Buddhists attacking and burning down each other's homes. The government declared a state of emergency in Rakhine, allowing the military to take over administration of the region. The riots resulted in over 80 deaths, 90,000 displaced people, and 2,500 homes destroyed. Once again, the Rohingya tried to flee across the border into Bangladesh. But this time, the Bangladeshi military was prepared and turned most of them away. Aung San Suu Kyi was on a European tour when the riots broke out. When she was asked if the Rohingya were Burmese, she replied, "I don't know." The situation continued to worsen for the Rohingya. In October 2012, fighting broke out again between Muslims and Buddhists, leading to another 100,000 displaced people and thousands of destroyed homes. By 2015, after years of violence and persecution, the Rohingya were fleeing Burma in droves. They headed for Bangladesh, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India. They often set sail in ramshackle, overcrowded boats, only to be turned away by the nation's Coast Guard or Navy. Naturally, this led to several boats capsizing, with hundreds drowning or being stranded at sea with nowhere to go. The violence ticked up another notch in 2016 when ARSA insurgents began attacking Burmese military outposts. ARSA, or Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, is a Rohingya Islamic insurgent group. Beginning in 2013 under the name Harakatul Yaqeen, they're led by Ataullah Abu Ammar, a Rohingya Muslim.
Al-Yaqeen, or Faith Movement, and in this exclusive interview obtained by CNN, its leader claims to be fighting on behalf of Myanmar's long-oppressed Rohingya Muslim minority.
We have been appealing to the world to help us regain our rights. Nothing happened. Therefore, now we have to deal with the government directly. We will continue to attack the oppressor, the government, until our citizenship is reinstated.
Abu Ammar's parents were born in Burma but fled to Pakistan in the 1960s to escape Buddhist persecution. Abu Ammar was born in Pakistan and educated in Saudi Arabia. Not surprisingly, several of ARSA's leaders are also Saudi citizens. On October 9, 2016, ARSA attacked 3 Burmese border posts, killing 9 officers and making off with an assortment of weapons and munitions. 2 days later, ARSA killed 4 Burmese soldiers in another surprise attack. In August 2017, ARSA launched a series of coordinated attacks against various government targets. They struck 24 police posts and an army base, killing 1 soldier, an immigration officer, and 10 policemen. The government claimed 59 ARSA insurgents were killed in the attacks. That same month, the Burmese government labeled ARSA a terrorist organization, claiming they received financial and military support from foreign Islamist groups. When ARSA offered a ceasefire, the government rejected it, stating they do not negotiate with terrorists. ARSA denies the terrorist label, stating they do not attack civilians and only target the Burmese military. The Burmese government did not take these attacks lying down. Every time ARSA attacked, the government responded with clearance operations meant to flush out Rohingya insurgents. The United Nations and independent organizations have accused the military of using heavy-handed tactics to fight the insurgency. These tactics included extrajudicial killings, mass rapes, and the destruction of homes. As of October 2017, Reuters and the United Nations estimated at least 2,000 Rohingya have been killed during these clearance operations. Refugees arriving in Bangladesh reported tales of rape and murder by both the military and Buddhist mobs. By September 2017, Bangladesh reported that they were near the breaking point, having taken over 430,000 Burmese refugees. The Bangladeshi government has announced plans to build housing for the refugees and begin an immunization program. However, they stressed the need for a permanent solution. The international community. Burma has received heavy criticism for their handling of the Rohingya crisis. In September 2017, Pope Francis condemned the attacks against the Muslim Rohingya. Amnesty International also accused the government of mining the border with Bangladesh. In October 2017, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees released a report detailing Burma's systematic process to drive out the Rohingya. The report accused the military of employing at least 6 tactics to achieve this goal. 1. Arbitrarily detaining and arresting Rohingya men between the ages of 15 and 40. 2. Arbitrarily detaining and arresting Rohingya political, cultural, and religious figures. 3. Denying Rohingya access to food, medicine, and other necessities. 4. Driving out Rohingya through repeated acts of humiliation and violence. 5. Inciting sectarian hatred that leads to violence and killing. 6. Instilling fear and trauma in the Rohingya through acts of brutality, including torture, rape, and murder. In August 2018, the UN accused Burma's military of mass killings and rape with a genocidal intent.
With a heavy heart and deep sadness, we have drawn conclusions on the basis of the facts that we never expected would be as grave as they are. What we have found are not only the most serious human rights violations, but crimes of the highest order under international law.
That was soon followed by an announcement by the International Criminal Court stating they would begin a preliminary investigation into the Rohingya crisis. In September 2018, the Canadian Parliament adopted a motion officially labeling the Rohingya crisis a genocide. Aung San Suu Kyi has also received her fair share of criticism. In 2016, she was selected by the president to be the nation's first ever state councillor of Myanmar. This position was created specifically for her as she was constitutionally barred from running for president. Many of the Rohingya hoped that things might change with her rise to power. As a proponent of human rights, it seemed obvious that she would at least speak out against their suffering. However, despite her high profile and authority, she appears unwilling or unable to help the Rohingya. In July 2017, a UN envoy to Burma accused her of behaving like the military government she fought against for so many years. In September 2017, fellow Nobel laureates Bishop Desmond Tutu and Malala Yousafzai demanded she do more to stop the Rohingya massacre. That same month, Aung San Suu Kyi chose to skip a UN General Assembly meeting. Many believe she did so to avoid criticism about the Rohingya crisis. In October 2017, Amnesty International accused her of burying her head in the sand about the crisis. And in September 2018, just a few days after declaring the crisis a genocide, the Canadian Parliament stripped away her honorary citizenship.
Do you ever worry that you will be remembered as the champion of human rights who failed to stand up to ethnic cleansing in her own country?
No, because I don't think there's ethnic cleansing going on. I think ethnic cleansing is too strong an expression to use for what's happening.
Oh, okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I feel like you've already lost the argument when you're saying, hey, we haven't killed enough people yet for it to be called ethnic cleansing. Yeah, think of this as more of a light ethnic dusting. Come on, huh?
Ending the crisis. As it stands now, there are still hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Burma and Bangladesh are working on a repatriation deal, but many refugees have stated they refuse to return unless they're granted citizenship. The refugee camps are dangerous and squalid with poor sanitation and infrastructure. The refugees depend on international aid for food and live on muddy hills that are in danger of landslides during monsoon season. It is very likely that Bangladesh and Burma will indeed work out a deal and the current situation will settle down. However, as we have seen, it will eventually flare up again if steps are not taken by the Burmese government. The simplest solution is that the government must change their position regarding Rohingya citizenship. Even some form of ethnically biased second-class citizenship is better than the current situation. ARSA and other Muslim insurgent groups should also reconsider their tactics. While ARSA claims to only attack military targets, civilian casualties are inevitable. These actions help legitimize government brutality and distract from the actual victims. Aung San Suu Kyi can also do more to speak out against the violence and acknowledge the problem. After all, she is a national hero and an international figure with enormous influence. Some have cautioned against too much international pressure as Burma is just coming out from under military rule. Others have said her government position is symbolic and she does not wield any true political power. While this may be true, lack of political power never stopped her from speaking out against oppression when she was under house arrest for nearly 21 years. There is no reason it should stop her now.